from James again. James, the book for you. I think most Bible reading people enjoy the book of James. Now, we've already read the first several verses, learned a lot of good things, how to be happy when the unhappy things happen, hopefully, and we spend a lifetime trying to do that. But we're going to start reading with verse 9 and read a few verses here of James 1. I want you to really think about this. Let the brother of low degree rejoice in that he is exalted. Now that's because you're a child of God. It's going to happen eventually. But on the other hand, verse 10, the rich needs to pay attention to this, in that he is made low. So he got on his high perch, and God says that isn't where you need to be. Because, and here's the reason why you need to come down off your high horse, because as the flower of the grass, he shall pass away. Now that's a pretty good picture. We look at these nice flowers that you buy at the greenhouse or some other place. Pretty. Look at the flowers that are just outside the door. Pretty. But you know very well, give them enough time, and even long enough that Jack Frost kind of shows up on the scene, and bingo, those beauties don't look very nice. Very picturesque. For in verse 11, for the sun is no sooner risen with the burning heat, but it withereth the grass, and the flower thereof falleth, and the grace of the fashion of it perisheth. So also shall the rich man fade away in his ways. Now notice it only took, what was it, just one verse to describe in regard to the person of low degree, but then two great big verses to describe those who are trying to be rich, and therein ultimate end. These are nice observances of the scriptures. So the first lesson right off that I'm taking out of these that we read is this. Actually, it's lesson number 7 out of this first chapter, but it goes this way. Reverse your thinking about what is commonly thought. Now I'm coming at it at this angle because I think that's kind of a good way to look at it. We just read verse 9, verse 10, and it gave you the description here, telling us, let those who live the more humble life rejoice. But do we always rejoice? Are we always happy about living on a what people would call a lesser level? And then the other side of the coin, let the rich come back to humility, because some things are going to start to fade in regard to them. But you know, we tend to work hard for the opposite of what the Scripture is trying to tell us here. Every one of us, to a certain degree, work the opposite. Look at all the people do and all the people say to achieve riches. We don't always call it riches. We might call it a little better living standard, or however. We could actually compile quite a list of what people pursue to do the opposite of what the Scriptures is trying to talk to them about. And isn't that a lot of life? I mean, people out there, they have their vocabulary. I tell you, they can fill the air with blue smoke of the wrong direction. Look at what people do to associate with certain ones. Some wouldn't be seen with the, what should I say, the church-going people. They make sure they associate with the right people. And I don't know much about this because I don't circulate a lot, but once in a while I'm in a doctor's office or somebody else's place, I hear them talk about associating with the right kind of people in town. Oh, that's important. And I was talking to a man that recently is getting divorced. And he looked back through his history and he could see with his wife that she was always wanting to associate with that better class of people. But his thinking didn't travel that same way. And I don't guess most of us travel that way. You've got to associate with just the right people. I don't have much time and feeling for that. Then how much dishonesty goes on just so people can get to another higher level. Constant, ever-flowing, con man-like dishonesty at just about every turn. And then there's the dress code that we got to keep up with in our time. The preachers are afraid to say anything about. And maybe mothers don't say too much about to their daughters. I don't know about dads. They need to teach their boys some other things if they can get it done. Now, pardon me for saying this. I'm just filling in a little bit of thought here. Cody and I got in the truck and we went to town. And I went to the chiropractor and then we went down to the bank. Needed to talk to the loan lady down there. He walked in and I walked in. He sat in the chair. And I sat in the chair, and he sat there just like a little gentleman. But I said, Cody, you need to take off your cap because you're in the presence of a lady. And he did. Did I teach him something there? Did I teach him something that was important? Yeah. I wonder if some of these things are not taught in our time, but the other kind of things that are taught, like I said, the dress code, maybe I should say allowed, all the different angles of exposing what should be covered up is pursued by the rich, and the higher you go in the political realm, oh, how you see it more and more. Not much satisfaction there, is there? Of course, I'm older. However, I think of this. Even though God is God, and think of that, and even though Jesus is the Son of God, the King of all, and ruler of the universe, you look at that, and then think of this teaching they're giving here. I don't know what kind of robes they wear. I know they talk about streets of gold over there. And I've heard it talk about the great white throne. So there must be something that's pretty rich-like up there in heaven. And yet look at the teaching he gives us here. Let the person of low degree rejoice. But watch out, you rich guy. Watch out, those of you who are trying to get rich. It's a complete teaching that baffles my mind when God, in all his dignity, passes on to us the thought, hey, come down off your high horse and be an average somebody. That's what he did. Jesus came down from and did what he did here for 33 years, setting us an example. So these verses are pretty neat, I'd say. Let the person of lower degree rejoice. Now I'm sure that doesn't mean we have to live a haggard life, an undisciplined, unruled life. No, the opposite. Just read your Proverbs. But let the brother of lower degree be satisfied. Matter of fact, rejoice. And don't let those eyes that want to look, like we've already been told this morning, that want to look in those other directions, don't let those eyes carry you somewhere that you're going to get withered like a flower and dried up like grass. I think this is a pretty good lesson. It's one I can understand. Why not? And I have to realize this, folks. Think about this when you go home. If God teaches this, then God must be in the business of helping you and me live this lower degree of humble living. Now, can you imagine what that means? That kind of tells me I'm not always going to get what I want to get. Doesn't it? Yeah. That kind of tells me that God's going to help this situation where things are not going to turn out the way that I think they ought to turn out. Hello? What do you think about that? As many as the Lord loves, he rebukes and chastens, and he's got the power to do it. I don't think he's going to let us get ahead as much as we might like to get ahead. You want to think about that? He might be kind of, what for? So that we won't get in that position and status of fried grass and cooked flowers. You know what I'm saying? Hey, how about being a little more godliness with contentment is great gain. That's golden. So that takes faith. It takes a lot of believing to be satisfied with the reverse of what the average person thinks about all the time. Now, we don't go out and buy a worser car just so we can be in a worser state. But I think you know what I'm talking about. Don't try so hard to think the opposite of what these verses are telling us. Do we have enough faith to do that? Well, let's read verse 12. Hey, are we doing okay? Okay, verse 12. Blessed is the man that endureth temptation, and you could say hardships too. For when he is tried, he shall receive the crown of life which the Lord hath promised to them that love him. Now that's quite a verse too. Now the King James says, blessed is the man. And by definition they say that means happy. You know, James is just kind of a happy writer here. At least he's reminding us to get happy. Now, there's things you do that doesn't make you very happy, but God's saying, hey, get happy. So you think a bit about this. How do you feel after something difficult has been completed? Are you happy? Now, I do have to admit something here, that when you have something in life that happens like a death, you can't get too happy too soon. It just doesn't seem to be that way. And there's other things that send people to the hospital and accidents that happen out there. Some of these bigger things, you just can't get happy too fast. But the Bible says, give it a good try. Yeah. But there are those everyday things, hardships. You get through the day, you're tired, you eat your supper, you sit in the recliner, and you're kind of pleased that you got the difficult taken care of today. Yeah. Sometimes you have to get up from your sleep and go out and do something, and oh my goodness, it's kind of hard at 1, 3 o'clock in the morning to have to run off somewhere, do something. But when you crawl back into bed and turn over and go back to sleep, you feel kind of good that you got on top of that. But there are a lot of things in life that involve more than a day. Like I've been talking to you about the old leaky roof. How long did you put up with it, and how much of a patch job have you had on the house? I remember as a youngster growing up, Cody's age, our old house had a roof, and then it had its patches. And as a kid, I was a little bit embarrassed over that. You know, kids think we ought to live on a higher level. So we put up with the roof and we patched the patches, and pretty soon we got out and put on a new roof and sit back, smile, because you got it done. What about the car when you made the final payment? That was difficult. How many payments have you made on payments for cars, pickups, and what have you? When you got it done, pretty nice. Our old pickup we bought 24 years ago and paid payments for 5 years. Don't you think I smiled after I got done with that last $330 payment? And somebody says 330, yeah. How about 530? But whatever the last payment was, that made you awful happy. And I'll tell you, I haven't put a loan on that jewel since. No more payments. Makes you happy. If you had a broken leg and you mend and you go through all that, you get on the other side of that that feels good. The crops were all in. When we finally got our corn planted just a week ago, a month late, felt good. You feel good every time you get done with that lawnmower, but sometimes it doesn't work just right. And when you miss the rain, you get a window and you put up your hay, and you get the hay all up, you feel good. And by the way, when you had that last flu bug that came along, and it seems like you never got over it, but now you have, that just kind of feels good. How about when you made the last payment on the house? Have you made the last payment on the house? Took us 18 years to have this place. A lot of hardship. We sold a lot of hay for $1 a bale to make the payment on this farm. And you've done a lot of the same types of things. It's hard, it's difficult, but when you get on the other side, it's kind of nice. And what about the time when the tree fell on the house and the cow, one of your better cows was hit by lightning out there on the hill? Hard times, difficult times. You've been through those kind of times, but you get on the other side of those struggles and you look back and yes, there's a kind of a happiness there. Now all these trials and struggles that we have add up to a whole lot of endurance. Do you ever get tired of enduring? One more thing? Ever tired of repairing? Getting out and getting under again? I'll send you home discouraged, won't I? Yeah, you get tired of these things, but when you get on the other side, there's a kind of a gladness, a happiness there that you have endured all these things. Isn't it nice to have a good forgetter that soon forgets a lot of that stuff? Hey, did you ever think of this? That it took a whole lot of persistence for that small snail to finally make it to Noah's Ark. Oh my goodness. I thought of the turtle too. What all he had to go through to get there. What all are you going to have to do tomorrow to get there? So the Bible is trying to tell us here, blessed or happy are you when you get on top of the things that seem to pop up all the time. Then how about this? The next lesson that comes out of verse 12. There will definitely be trials or hardships, and they won't come easy. Now these verses that read these things to us are reading them to us from reality standpoint. Blessed are they that endure trials and temptations. Now he's writing that to us, just plain announcing you're going to get it. You're going to have these experiences. Was there a younger time in your life when you thought you knew enough that it wouldn't be happening to you like it's happening to everyone else? Oh my goodness. We soon had an awakening, didn't we? Yeah. Trials and temptations, both are interwoven. There's a whole, and there's a whole lot of temptation with the trials, plus the other types of temptations. They all go together. Both of these are great big bundles of unhappiness that we have to handle. The difficulties, and you've had enough of them now to know that you have plenty of them, and just get ready, there's going to be plenty yet to come. Now, I'm not saying that to discourage, that's just letting you know what you already know. For sure, we are going to have this happen. The deer are going to get in and eat the tops out of your tomatoes. And what they can't eat, they'll walk on. And what the deer don't get a hold of, the wild turkey's going to give you a hard time. And if that isn't enough, the neighbor's fence will let his goats and his horses come over on your side. Trials and the temptations of life. We had a little lesson on that this morning. The things that you see draw you into temptation. And we've lived enough that we've seen enough that we're pretty well on top of this, but it's still out there. I think I've heard of a few old people getting themselves in trouble because they saw too much and did too much. And they knew better because they'd already lived enough time. Hey, I can tell you something kind of amusing. About 15 years ago, I was at my home church. Service was over and everybody standing. And they were giving the last announcements. And the youth director got up there in a big gusty way, you know, they're still young. We are going to have a mixed swimming party this Friday at such and so place at such and so time. Mixed swimming. Of course, that's where almost everything comes off with a little put on. He made that gusto announcement. I thought, okay. But one of the old elders, about 4 pews back of me, he halfway shouted out, "Vulgar." Can you imagine that? Vulgar. I did say under my breath, "Good for you, old man." Now, what's the difference? A young, youthful somebody saying, "We're going to have a mixed swimming party," and a man that's 50 years older and experienced, been around the block, says, "Vulgar." Oh, what 50 years can do. Even in that category. So there's trials, there's huge amount of temptation, and the trials won't end. I want to read, let's turn back out of James to 2 Corinthians. I want to read you something here. 2 Corinthians, you know, God is big of breeches as he wears, and Jesus as big a crown as he wears, sure has different kind of thinking. Look at 2 Corinthians 4, verse 17 and 18. Now kind of savvy up on this. It reads like this: "For our light afflictions." Now can you fathom that? However, I have to say, Jesus, who went to the cross and did what he did, starts us to learn, "For our light afflictions, which is but for a moment." Do you think Jesus' 6 hours on the cross felt like a moment? Wow. "It worketh for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory." Doesn't that just about say everything that I could shut up here? All these afflictions, the hardships, the flat tires, the overall tractor, all of that we have to put up with and pay off loans for. These light afflictions, folks. I hope that sends you home with a halfway smile. They work for us a far more exceeding eternal weight of glory. So no matter what it is that's just turning you upside down and inside out, it's going to work for you a glorified something. Probably not just for you, but as you pass your experiences and your example on to somebody else. It's going to do something for us. That's what that verse says. And then verse 18, while we look not at the things which are seen. Now here's the secret to this whole thing. It's what way what direction you're looking, and what you're looking for, and what you end up making sure that you see. Look not at the things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen. We're like Abraham. We're looking towards something that's bigger and better because we know better. And even in this life, things will be better than the trials are seeming like. For the things which are seen are temporal. Yeah, they go flat-tired. But the things which are not seen are eternal. And that's why we're told, set your affections on things above and not on things of the earth. The earthly things pass, but the eternal things, hey, do you have enough faith to believe that? That these things you can't see, the things you can't put a touch to them, have so much more for us than the little things. That's why I like what is taught here. And that's why I want to send you home thinking about somebody that works harder than you do. And you don't even know it. Have you ever thought about the busy bee? The bee has been aptly described as busy. Now listen, to produce 1 pound of honey, 1 simple pound of honey, the bee must visit 56,000 clover heads. They grow out there across the countryside and in your backyard. Now, since each one of those clover heads has 60 flower tubes, a total of 3,360,000 visits are necessary to give us that 1 pound of honey for the breakfast table. Oh, busy bee. Meanwhile, that worker bee has flown the equivalent of 3 times around the world. You think you're busy? We get so busy we fly off the handle. The bee gets so busy he flies around the world. To produce 1 tablespoon of honey for our toast, that little bee makes 4,200 trips to flowers. You're going to stop using honey or use it more. He makes about 10 trips a day to the fields, each trip lasting 20 minutes average and 400 flowers. A worker bee will fly as far as 8 miles if he cannot find nectar flow right nearby. So when you feel that being persistent and enduring is a difficult task for you, then why don't you think about the bee? I'm going to go home and take a nap. Who wants to go with me? Yeah. That's James up to this point. Savvy?